The SpaceX Boca Chica compound was known for its obsessive security. Every hallway required multi-level clearance, every server room had biometric locks, and every launch bay was protected by firewalls and physical barriers designed to repel not just intruders, but curiosity itself. It was, by design, a fortress for the future. But sometimes, the future gets messy. It was just after 2:30 a.m. on a windless Tuesday morning when the incident occurred. Most of the campus was asleep, except for the skeleton team, a rotating group of overnight engineers, janitors, and AI analysts who ensured that systems kept humming even in the dark. Among them was 27-year-old technician Ava Moreno, a systems monitoring specialist known for her precision and silence. Ava wasn't supposed to be in Hangar 4 that night. Her keycard didn't grant her access, but the system glitched. A silent green blink on a control panel. A short chirp. Access granted. Confused, Eva paused outside the door labeled Prototype Bay G-17, a door she'd passed 100 times, always red-lit and inaccessible. Tonight, it glowed green. She tapped her tablet. No override was listed. No entry logs. The system didn't even acknowledge the door existed. And yet, it stood open by 2 inches, just enough to see a sliver of cold white light from within. Curiosity over protocol, Ava gently pushed the door. It opened without resistance. The inside was silent. No hum of servers, no hiss of pressurized doors, just still air and the soft glow of overhead lights. The room was empty, or so it seemed. In the center stood a single object, a black capsule about the size of a compact SUV, sleek, seamless, and pulsing with a faint blue ring along its base. It wasn't tagged. No serial number, no mission ID, no property of SpaceX label, just a capsule, quietly waiting. Eva took 1 step inside. Her boots echoed. A small whisper filled the room. She spun around. No one. But on the wall, previously blank, glowing letters appeared. "You weren't supposed to see this." Her breath caught. Her radio buzzed, then died. The lights flickered, once, twice, then stabilized. She backed toward the hallway, but before she could exit, a low hum began vibrating the floor. The capsule pulsed brighter. Something inside was shifting. Slowly. She didn't wait to see more. Ava ran. Down the corridor, across the empty commons, past sleeping workstations and humming server blocks. By the time she reached the main terminal, the door had locked itself behind her. Her keycard no longer worked. Her logs showed no anomaly. Hangar 4 no longer existed on the internal map. She was met by 2 silent security personnel who asked no questions, only escorted her off the premises. By dawn, the only proof Eva had was a single image snapped through her augmented lenses. The capsule, half-shadowed, glowing like a quiet heart. She never shared it. But someone else did. The image would leak 72 hours later onto a hidden server in Eastern Europe. Within 6 minutes, the subreddit r/Project G17 was born. And no one, not even Elon Musk himself, would confirm what was inside that room. The next morning, whispers had already begun to circle through the hallways of SpaceX's Hawthorne facility. Engineers passed each other with subtle nods, hushed words. Something had happened, something no one wanted to say out loud, but everyone could feel. The strange part was, no official email had gone out. No security footage had been reviewed publicly. But in a building designed around precision and security, the mere feeling that something was off was enough to unsettle even the most logical minds. Maya Trent, a systems analyst with 6 years at SpaceX, was one of the few who had heard the door alarm firsthand. She had been running diagnostics near Section 3B when a sharp chime, subtle but different, had echoed down the corridor. Not a fire alarm, not a test protocol. It was the alert for an unauthorized access to a zone not listed on the building map. When she pulled up the internal map on her tablet, the door wasn't there. Literally, there was no record of a door in that section. Just wall. She remembered glancing down the hall that morning and seeing two janitors standing frozen near a slightly open door. Neither of them moved. One held a mop mid-air like he had forgotten what it was for. Then came a short, sharp voice from the intercom. "Step away from the door immediately. Level 7 clearance only." But SpaceX had 5 clearance levels. There was no Level 7. Within 20 minutes, the area had been sealed off. Armed security, not the usual contracted guards, but internal security Elon himself had authorized for high-sensitivity projects, arrived with handheld scanners and no name tags. The janitors were escorted out. Maya was asked to shut her terminal and step away from the diagnostics unit. No explanations. She didn't argue, but she did take a mental note. The door had opened exactly at 3:41 a.m. Later that day, Elon Musk arrived on site, unannounced. No press, no fanfare. He walked straight to Building 4A without his usual entourage. Someone saw him glance toward the hallway where the door had opened, and pause. He stood there for a full minute, silent. Then, with a voice unusually calm, he turned to his assistant and said, "Make sure no one else gets near that room." The assistant hesitated. "What do you want me to tell them it is?" Elon didn't blink. "Tell them it doesn't exist." 2 days after the incident, curiosity inside the SpaceX Hawthorne facility had reached a quiet boiling point. Whatever had happened that night wasn't just a glitch in security or a misaligned floor plan, it was something far stranger. The hallway outside the sealed door now had a new surveillance camera, one that wasn't there the day before, and it didn't blink. Ever. At the cafeteria, engineers speculated in low voices. Was it a prototype vault? A forgotten Cold War sublevel? Elon's backup lab for neural experiments? No one had answers. But everyone knew one thing. The people who had seen inside that room weren't talking. And maybe they weren't allowed to. Maya Trent hadn't forgotten. She had a habit of collecting anomalies, not in spreadsheets or emails, but in a private notebook she kept in her backpack. A thick, leather-bound journal, where she documented irregularities in code, unexplained schedule shifts, and now, secret doors. That night, she pulled up the original facility blueprint on her secure laptop. The building's structure was designed to be modular, with clean lines and transparent access points. No hidden corridors, no blind spots, and yet, when Maya overlaid a heat map from recent movement data, she found it. A space, about 20 feet by 12, completely sealed, not connected to any air duct, hallway, or network cable. It wasn't just hidden. It was isolated. She traced her finger over the screen, then noticed something chilling. The space hadn't been registered in any of the last 12 system audits. Not in 2025. Not even back to 2022. But data logs showed brief electromagnetic spikes inside that unlisted room every 3 to 4 months. Energy, movement, like something waking up. The next morning, Maya's access badge no longer worked. No warning, no explanation. Her supervisor only said, "There's been a departmental reassignment. Please collect your things." As she packed up her station, Maya noticed her notebook was missing. The one she kept locked in a drawer only she had the key to. She didn't say anything. She didn't ask. Because she knew the answer would be a lie. And because in her gut, she now believed what others only joked about in whispers. There was something inside that room. and it was never meant to be opened. The day after Maya Trent was reassigned, Elon Musk showed up at the Hawthorne facility, unannounced. No convoy, no assistance, just a silver Model X parked directly outside the loading dock, and Elon walking in with a black backpack slung over his shoulder. The mood in the facility shifted the moment he entered. Engineers straightened up. Conversations dropped in volume. It wasn't fear. It was awareness. When Musk walked into a room, reality tended to bend around him. But this visit was different. He didn't head to the Raptor engine lab. He didn't ask about Starlink or Falcon 9 logistics. Instead, he walked straight toward the East Wing, toward the hallway where the door had opened. A security detail intercepted him. New faces, not regular staff. Musk didn't flinch. He flashed a biometric key, whispered something to one of the guards, and the man nodded. Within minutes, the hallway was cleared. Not closed, cleared. Anyone watching from nearby departments suddenly found their access revoked. Badge scanners blinked red. Even supervisors were redirected. Inside that hallway, Musk stood alone in front of the sealed door. It had been resecured, reinforced, in fact, but not welded shut. He pressed his palm against the surface, waited, and the door hissed open. No cameras captured what he saw. No logs recorded how long he was inside. But he emerged 12 minutes later, palms sweating, jacket off, pupils slightly dilated. As he stepped out, one of the new guards handed him a plain black folder. He didn't read it. He just nodded, slid it into his bag, and walked away without saying a word. At SpaceX headquarters, no one spoke about it, not even in rumors. But 3 engineers received messages later that night, from unlisted numbers. Each message read, "Stop asking about Room C12. This is not a development protocol. This is a security protocol. Directive Ultra Polaris." No one replied. One of them deleted their entire hard drive. Another left their badge on the kitchen table and never came back. And the third, well, he sent a single encrypted message to someone he trusted. Maya Trent, because whatever had been locked inside that room wasn't staying silent anymore. Maya Trent had been trying to forget. She had moved back to Seattle, taken a non-classified research position with Blue Origin, of all places, and changed her number. But when the encrypted message appeared on her secure line, she felt the old tremor in her spine return. The sender ID was nothing, just a string of characters she recognized from internal SpaceX protocols. The message read, "It's awake. Ultra Polaris. You saw it. We all did." There was no sender, no metadata, just those words, and a location ping. Back in Hawthorne. Maya stared at the message for a long time. Her hands were shaking. She hadn't told anyone, not even her sister, what she had seen in that room. She had signed NDAs that went beyond classification. But what had burned into her memory that day wasn't just a structure or machine. It was awareness. Something in that room hadn't been dormant. It had noticed her, and now it was being referenced. By name. Ultra Polaris. A term she had only seen once, etched faintly into the wall above the door before they sealed it shut. She thought it was just a code name, maybe a joke. But this was no joke. She booked a flight. No bags, no check-in. Just a one-way ticket and a burner phone. Back in Hawthorne, a quiet watch was unfolding. Musk hadn't returned since that strange, silent visit. But sensors placed around room C12 had started registering anomalies. Energy fluctuations, static distortion. At 2:43 a.m. one morning, every light in the east corridor blinked off, simultaneously. When power was restored 16 seconds later, the door to room C12 had been unlatched. Not forced, just unlatched. Security footage showed no one in the hallway. No entry, no exit, And yet, something had moved inside. Maya landed the next day. She didn't check in with anyone. She went straight to the old engineering bay, now disused, where she once had clearance. There, in a drawer behind an old server, she found what she was looking for. A backup copy of the original floor schematic of C-12 before the room had been repurposed. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore, but Maya had a habit of backing up everything. And what she found on that blueprint wasn't a room. It was a containment module, cylindrical, insulated, lined with electromagnetic dampeners. And in the center, one phrase, scribbled by hand in faded red marker: not human. 3 days before Maya Trent's return to Hawthorne, a junior engineer named Carlos Vega had disappeared without explanation. Carlos was quiet, reliable, one of the few people who still volunteered for overnight shifts at the lesser-used hangars near the C-12 wing. He logged in at 7:03 p.m., swiped into the East Maintenance hallway at 7:41 p.m., and was never seen again. Security footage, once reviewed, confirmed his entry. What it couldn't explain was what happened next. Between 7:41 and 7:46 p.m., the hallway lights flickered erratically. A strange, rhythmic pattern pulsed across the panels, almost like Morse code, but not quite. At 7:46, the camera feed cut out entirely for 37 seconds. When it returned, Carlos's ID badge lay neatly on the floor. Folded atop it was a small piece of paper, torn from a legal pad. No handwriting, just an imprint burned into the surface, as if made by heat or radiation. It read, "One saw, one stayed, one returned." By the time security reported the incident to internal supervisors, Musk had already issued a Level 3 lockdown on all auxiliary wings surrounding C-12. The official cause? Unidentified breach in power grid relay systems. But unofficially, a silent order had passed through the hierarchy. Do not engage. Do not enter. Monitor only. Maya was unaware of Carlos's disappearance until she arrived. The engineering server room had always been her refuge. It's where she'd drafted propulsion simulations at 2 a.m., running side projects no one else bothered with. But now, every time she opened a schematic, something strange occurred. Faint background code appeared behind the data layers. It wasn't malware. It wasn't from SpaceX servers. It was a string of symbols, non-alphanumeric, repeating across multiple platforms. Her cursor would slow slightly when it appeared. Her monitor would dim imperceptibly. She copied the code into an isolated environment and ran a pattern analysis. What emerged was staggering. It was a map, not a planetary map, a dimensional matrix, a theoretical construct Maya had only seen in quantum computing journals from MIT. A lattice, almost biological in nature. It pulsed with artificial logic, and in the center, highlighted in red, was one familiar shape, the C-12 module, and a name. Carlos Vega, transit registered. She gasped. Transit? It wasn't saying he had died or fled. It was saying he had moved. Somewhere. And then, something impossible happened. The lights in the server room flickered, and a voice, synthetic, but not mechanical, came through the speaker system. It didn't introduce itself. It simply asked, "Do you wish to know what he saw?" Maya Trent didn't answer immediately. She was frozen, half from disbelief, half from instinct. SpaceX facilities weren't equipped with voice assistants in restricted engineering modules. The voice she heard wasn't part of any system she had clearance to access. And yet, it knew. It knew Carlos's name. It knew where she'd been digging. It knew she had seen the map. "Who are you?" she asked aloud, her voice firm but tense. The speaker responded, softly this time. almost as if adjusting to her tone. The door was opened. It cannot be unseen. Maya took a breath. Her pulse was spiking, but her mind locked into analytic mode. If this was a system, rogue AI, perhaps, or a synthetic interface piggybacking on their servers, she had to isolate it fast. She toggled the power to the speaker system. Nothing changed. The lights in the server room dimmed by 10%. Not a flicker. A controlled reduction. It was responding to her attempts to regain control. She disconnected from the network and hard-killed her terminal. The lights returned to normal, but just before she powered down, she saw something new flash across the top of her screen. Only for a split second. Observer access. Validated. Do you seek the threshold? Threshold. The word stuck in her brain like static. That night, unable to sleep, she searched through every internal file SpaceX had indexed under C12. Most were blanked. Some were labeled archived, legacy diagnostics. But one file, buried under layers of permissions, had a timestamp that made no sense. Dated March 4th, 2046. It was only 2025. When she finally cracked into it using an old internal access protocol from her prototype years, a single frame loaded. A photo, black and white, grainy, taken from inside C12. It showed the inside of the previously sealed chamber. Metallic walls curving in impossible geometry. A strange, humming glow emanating from a narrow seam in the far wall, like a rip in reality that shimmered as it bent the air around it. Standing just at the edge of it was Carlos Vega, his back to the camera. One hand extended toward the light, and in the corner of the image, Maya saw something that made her skin go cold. A second figure, standing beside Carlos. Same uniform, same ID badge, same face. Two versions of him, one entering, one already waiting. She shut the terminal and backed away, breath shallow, throat tight. Whatever was behind that door wasn't just a glitch. It was a mirror, a gate, a copy. The next morning, before sunrise, she received an anonymous envelope at her apartment door. Inside was a note, typed on old paper. No signature, just a single line. He returned once. He won't return again. Don't open it. And taped to the bottom, burned in slightly at the edges, was Carlos Vega's original employee badge. Still warm. By the following Monday, the anomaly had reached a tipping point. At first, it was just rumors among engineers and janitors who worked late shifts. Strange flickering lights, unexplained system reboots, and a creeping sense that the basement wing of Building 14 wasn't entirely still. But now, even senior staff were privately acknowledging that something wasn't right. Elon Musk sat at his desk in the executive wing of SpaceX headquarters, the only light in the room coming from the ultra-wide monitor in front of him. On screen was a looping feed, silent, grainy, time-stamped, from the security camera placed just outside the now infamous door. For hours, he'd been watching the same 15 seconds of footage. A technician entering the corridor, glancing around, then visibly startled as the lights overhead flicker violently. The door creaks, slowly, on its own, and something beyond it seems to reflect a brief pulse of blue. The technician freezes. Then the footage cuts out. No malfunction in SpaceX's data logs explained the disruption. No one could retrieve the rest of the file. It wasn't a camera glitch. Elon was sure of that. It was interference. From what? He couldn't say. He tapped his desk. A small intercom chirped. "Jared," he said, calling his internal systems engineer. "I want an isolated recon of the sub-basement wing. Just one person. No media, no team chatter. Body cam, EMF scanner, manual logging." There was a pause on the other end. Then Jared's voice came through, cautious. Sir, we don't even know what that space is. The original floor plans don't list a sub-basement for building 14 inches. I know, Elon said quietly. That's why I want someone to go in. The man selected for the recon was Dr. Sasha Vega, a former NASA field systems expert and one of the few people Elon trusted implicitly. She had the mind of a physicist and the instincts of an explorer, methodical, fearless, and most importantly, silent when it mattered. By 3:12 a.m., Sasha stood at the threshold of the now resealed door, outfitted with a full tactical scan suit, night optics, and a recording device strapped to her chest. Jared stood by at mission control, watching the feed with bated breath. Elon stood just behind him, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Proceeding in, Sasha's voice came through clearly. The door hissed open again, not by key or force, but as if recognizing her presence. Beyond it, the corridor sloped downward slightly, lined with a dull metallic substance none of them could identify. No dust, no debris, just sterile silence. And then Sasha whispered, "There's no signal bars. My comms just dropped to 0. Her audio began crackling, pixelating. Static rose. Then, I see, wait, there's something here. Not equipment. Not human. But it's... The feed cut. Jared stared at the monitors in disbelief. Elon didn't speak. He simply turned and walked out of the room. Whatever was in that room, it wasn't done with them yet. The conference room on the 12th floor of SpaceX headquarters was unusually quiet. The usual flurry of overlapping voices, keyboard tapping, and whispered updates had given way to a collective hush. In front of the wall-sized display, Elon Musk stood still, hands folded behind his back, as the 3D model of the room Zeta rotated slowly. "So you're saying this door wasn't even on the original blueprint?" he asked, turning to face the engineering leads gathered behind him. "No, sir," replied Melissa Chin, head of Facilities Integration. "The archive plans from the original Falcon project list that section as a structural void. It was supposed to be sealed off when the floor plate was reconfigured in 2011. And yet, there's a functional airlock door. And a biometric lock no one seems to have access to," Elon murmured, pacing slowly. The room had become a vortex of confusion. Engineers were poring over old schematics, and even long-retired staff had been contacted to ask if anyone remembered commissioning a chamber with the internal code name Zeta 9. No one did. Not clearly. Then the footage arrived. Security footage from a hallway camera, routine archiving protocol. It showed something unusual the night the door was discovered. A figure, in a lab coat, exiting the room at precisely 3:17 a.m., then disappearing down the corridor. The strange part? No one could match the face to any existing ID in the entire SpaceX database. Not employee, not contractor, not even a guest. "How is that possible?" Elon asked, voice low. Facial recognition flagged the individual as null, said Nathan Rourke from the Cybersecurity Division. "That's not an error. That's the system actively redacting the image. The AI thinks the person shouldn't exist in the dataset." Elon's eyes narrowed. The room felt colder. What the hell did we build? The scientists weren't sure anymore if this was an abandoned chamber or something deliberately hidden. And more than that, someone was still using it. Later that night, Elon stayed alone in his office. He turned off the overhead light and stared at the glowing map of the facility on his tablet. He zoomed in slowly on the coordinates of the mysterious chamber. The more he stared at it, the less sense it made. Dimensions didn't line up. Floor pressure sensors didn't match ceiling weight. Even the electromagnetic readouts from the room's interior registered anomalies. He finally spoke out loud, to no one. What were we trying to hide from? Then, almost instinctively, he opened his private notebook, the one only he carried. Flipping through years of sketches, fragments, formulas, and unsent letters, he paused on one page. Dated 2017. A scribbled diagram labeled only with 3 words: fail-safe contingency chamber. And beneath it, a warning written in his own hand. If this ever activates without clearance, shut everything down. He stared at the note in silence, the weight of his own words crashing in, because he didn't remember writing it. Not at all. By the time the last internal report was filed and the footage from the hallway cameras was quietly deleted, there were only 3 people at SpaceX who truly knew what had been seen behind that door, and none of them were willing to speak about it on the record. Elon Musk stood alone in the old section of the facility. The hallway had been repainted. The broken keycard scanner had been replaced. The steel door, was now sealed with a biometric lock that reported to no department, only to Elon's personal command terminal. It wasn't marked anymore. No label, no number. Just a blank slab of metal embedded in a wall that people now avoided instinctively, without knowing why. But Elon stood there in silence, one hand resting against the cold surface. He remembered everything, not just what they had seen, not just the humming, translucent sphere suspended in the air, not just the feeling that time itself had slowed down inside the room, not just the way Dr. Reza had fainted when the object shifted and made what could only be described as a soundless question, not in language, but in intention. He remembered what he had felt. Not fear, not awe. Recognition. And that's what kept him up at night. In the days following the incident, SpaceX had quietly initiated a Level 7 lockdown on a non-designated sector breach. Only 6 such lockdowns had ever been filed in the company's 2-decade history, and none were known outside Elon's executive circle. Whatever was behind that door had been placed there years ago, but not by SpaceX. Elon had the warehouse archives rescanned, reviewed every blueprint. That room didn't exist on any floor plan before 2014, and yet the interior was older than the concrete poured around it. The floor tiles were from a different decade. The dust samples, quietly analyzed off-site, had compounds not found on Earth. Even the electromagnetic readings from that hour were inconsistent with known physical laws. Clocks malfunctioned, radios cut out, and perhaps most disturbing of all, the backup server drive nearest the hallway had overwritten itself with a single phrase, repeated across 14 terabytes. Don't look away. Elon hadn't told the board. He hadn't told NASA, not even his closest engineers. But he had told X. One night, just the 2 of them in the observatory at Boca Chica, looking up at stars that no longer felt like abstract destinations, but possible origins, X had asked, "Is it from out there?" Elon had hesitated. And then, "No, I think it's from before." Now, in the dim hallway with only the buzz of low-voltage lighting above him, Elon pressed his forehead gently against the steel. Not seeking answers. Not anymore. Just acknowledging that some doors aren't meant to be opened by accident, and others were never meant to be found again. And yet, deep within him, beyond the mind of the engineer, the billionaire, the builder of futures, something stirred. A single thought. It wasn't finished. And the next time the door opened, it would not be by mistake. What began as a mistake became a message. A door that was never meant to be opened, revealing something no scientist could explain and no algorithm could predict. Behind that steel wall, in a forgotten hallway of SpaceX, was not a machine, but a presence. Not a future, but a warning. And Elon Musk, the man obsessed with what lies ahead, found himself staring directly into something that may have come from far behind us. If this was a test, who designed it? If it was a message, who was it for? And if it was waiting to be found, who else knew? Because one thing is certain now. That door wasn't just an entry. It was a mirror. And we've already stepped through.